In Laboratory Reddit, today's story is...
My husband disappeared for 4 days without explanation, until a woman knocked on my door with photos that destroyed 10 years of marriage and exposed his unforgivable double life. Over the last few weeks, my husband has been behaving strangely, but I didn't think anything of it because we've been together for almost a decade. We've always loved each other and everything seemed fine, so it never occurred to me to suspect him. We started our relationship 10 years ago, got married 8 years ago, and have 2 small children, a 6-year-old girl and a 4-year-old boy. Our families get along wonderfully, we are financially stable, and there are practically no problems between us. I thought our life was perfect, but it seems that it wasn't enough for him, as I recently discovered that he has been in a parallel relationship for the last 6 years and has another whole family in another state. And not only that, apparently he has been promising this other woman that he will leave me for almost 6 years, and a few days ago she decided to come and talk to me about it in person. My husband, let's call him Gavin, needs to travel constantly for work, so I never thought it was strange when he had to be away for a few weeks every month. However, lately he started traveling much more. He would be away for weeks, and I would hardly hear from him. I found that suspicious because even when he was busy, he always kept in touch with me and the children, and that had changed recently. When I mentioned it to him, he got very angry with me, telling me that I was interfering with his work and that it was not appropriate, which also seemed strange to me, but I never imagined that this had anything to do with infidelity. It was completely unthinkable to me. Then, last week something else happened that caught my attention. I was putting on makeup in front of the mirror because I was going out with friends and my phone was on the bed next to him. It started ringing with message notifications, so I asked him to check it because I thought it was my friends asking me something, but he told me it was just spam messages and deleted them all saying they would take up too much space. I didn't think anything was suspicious at the time, so I let it go. The next day, he left for work in the morning and never came back. I haven't seen him in person since. I started to worry when he didn't reply to my messages or answer my calls, so I contacted my in-laws and he didn't reply to them either. The next day, after 24 hours, I decided to call one of his coworkers to ask about him, who told me that he had indeed gone to work that day but was working from home. So I knew he was okay because he had attended to his work responsibilities, but he was definitely not at our house. He was simply working remotely from somewhere else. I was about to go to the police, but after talking to his colleague, I realized that he wasn't missing. He was just ignoring us all. I started to try to contact him more desperately, but he didn't answer even once. Almost 4 days passed and no one had heard from him, although he was still working remotely, so I knew he was perfectly fine. I even tried to get his coworker to help me contact him, but he told me that as soon as he called Gavin and mentioned that I wanted to talk to him, he hung up, so it was clear that he was avoiding me and I had no idea why, which left me totally distraught. 4 days later, just when I was about to give up and do something unprofessional like calling the people in his office to ask them to try to put me in touch with him, his lover turned up at my house and I got all the answers. This woman, let's call her Helen, arrived in the afternoon and introduced herself as Gavin's partner. I thought it was a joke, but then she showed me numerous photos of her with Gavin on her phone, and that's how I discovered that he had been with her for the last 6 years. They even had a 4-year-old daughter together, and his job didn't require as much travel as he had led me to believe, as he went to visit them every month, not for work. Apparently, lately he had had to travel even more because she was losing patience as she was pregnant again, and this time she wanted him to leave her for good. They had been arguing a lot about this, and she decided to tell me the truth in person regardless of the consequences. That's why he had managed to find out my number and send me messages the other day, but unfortunately the phone had been in the wrong hands at the time, and I couldn't see those messages because he deleted them all. As I didn't reply, she thought I wouldn't believe her until she spoke to me in person. She told me that after sending those messages that I never saw, Gavin showed up the next day to confront her about what she was doing. They had a big argument about it. She left him, and since then she hadn't heard from him either. It later occurred to her that maybe I hadn't seen those messages because he could have deleted them, so she decided to take a flight, come see me, and tell me the truth in person. It took me a while to accept that he was telling the truth, that this wasn't a practical joke, and shortly afterwards I simply asked him to leave because I needed time to process it, and she left. I had left the children at my parents' house earlier that day because I felt very disoriented and needed time to myself, and I was lucky to have done so because I ended up crying inconsolably for hours. Then came the anger, and on impulse, I decided to drive to my parents' house to see my children and tell them that their father had cheated on me, so most likely their parents would separate. They were too young to understand exactly what was happening, but I didn't care. I was so angry that I told them that their father had another family in another state and that we had all been deceived for years. They probably didn't fully understand the situation, but I was so upset that they got scared and started crying. I comforted them a little and told them that everything would be all right. Then, when they calmed down, I decided to drive to my in-laws' house and tell them exactly the same thing. Obviously, they understood perfectly well what was happening, but they refused to believe it, saying that it must be some kind of mistake or misunderstanding because Gavin loves me and would never do anything to hurt us and his family. I told them about the photos that Helen had shown me and said that I believed him, given how suspicious his behavior had been over the last few days. His father also became very upset, but I didn't wait to see his reaction. I got back in my car and drove back home. Around midnight, several hours after I had done all these things, he finally replied and began to beg for another chance. He was apologizing in his message, but he didn't specify exactly what he was sorry for, so I decided to call him, and this time he did answer. He was crying and tried to explain things to me, but I didn't even want to give him that chance. I told him straight out that I would never forgive him, that I would file for divorce and make sure he paid for everything he had done. And then I told him that I had already told his parents and the children the truth, and that would be his punishment. As soon as I mentioned that I had told the children, he started acting hysterically, saying that there was no need to do that and that he might never forgive me for telling the children. I didn't care what he thought, so I just hung up after venting and then blocked him. But now that the anger has subsided slightly, and I've spoken to my parents too, they said that while I hadn't done anything wrong by telling their parents, it probably wasn't right to tell the children, not for his sake but for their own well-being, and now I feel a bit guilty about that. Am I the bad guy for telling my children that their father cheated on me and has another family in another state? Update 1. Hello. It's been 2 weeks since my last update, and first of all, I feel very guilty about talking to my children the way I did because I don't think it was a healthy reaction. I didn't feel bad for their father's sake, but for their own well-being, because I can't imagine how difficult and uncomfortable it must have been for them to see me behave like that. If I had been in their place, I would probably have been completely terrified, so I apologized to them. I tried to make it up to them, and they seemed to have already forgotten about it, but they understood that something wasn't right, so they were also very affectionate with me, and I'm glad that, despite being so young, they were so understanding. My parents told me that after I left that day, the 2 children had been quite upset, and it took them a while to calm them down because they had realized that something was wrong between their parents, and they seemed very worried. My parents didn't tell me until later because they knew I was already going through a lot. They didn't want to make me feel guilty, but they had a serious conversation with me afterwards and told me it wasn't right to react like that. I had already realized it on my own too, so luckily I was able to fix the situation pretty quickly, and I don't think it will have any consequences in the coming weeks. Having mentioned that, I should say that last week I filed for divorce. It took me a couple of days to hire the right lawyer, but I chose the best possible option because I really want him to regret what he did. The terms of my request are extremely strict, and I have no intention of giving in on anything. I don't want to show him any kind of leniency. Of course, I'm not being completely unfair, but I want what I want and I don't care what anyone else thinks of me. I'm going to keep the house, the cars, and everything else we have, and I'm going to ask for financial compensation. I'm not asking for much in that respect because I don't think I can afford it, but I'm not going to give in on the rest, and I'll make sure I get what I want. As for the children, it took me a while to decide what I wanted regarding their situation because, in all honesty, as much as it pains me to admit it now, he has always been a good father to them. The children love their father, and I don't think it's fair to deprive them of a relationship with him. Later on, when they are old enough to understand things for themselves, they can decide if they want to keep in touch with him, and I won't mind. But for now, I think it's important to at least give it a try. More importantly, I don't want to be the kind of mother who keeps her children away from her ex-husband, even if he is unfaithful, because I simply don't want them to grow up resenting me for not having given them even a chance in their relationship. Basically, I don't want to use them as a weapon, so I agree to share custody of the children with him, but he will have to make the arrangements to see them. I'm not going to make things easier for him at any time. Anyway, that's what I've decided for now. I think he's been notified, but I don't know for sure because he hasn't responded yet, and it's not like he can contact me because I've blocked him everywhere. My in-laws contacted me last week just to ask me to allow them to keep in touch with their grandchildren because, no matter what their son had done, they were ashamed of him, but they weren't part of it. So I told them that I had no intention of keeping their grandchildren from them because I don't want to punish them for something they didn't even participate in. I respect my in-laws. They have always been very kind to me, and I know they don't approve of what their son did. That's enough for me. I don't care if they are his parents as long as they don't support him. I am fine with them, and honestly, they are good people. I have also asked them to let me know if their son contacts them and to be the channel of communication between the two of us in case our lawyers are not available. They have agreed and promised me that as soon as he contacts them, they will let me know. So far that has not happened, but I am being patient for now. The last 2 weeks have been incredibly stressful for me. I am really grateful to my parents and in-laws as they have completely taken over the children and are looking after them on their own because I have to deal with my work, with my emotions, and, honestly, I am just not in the right state of mind at the moment. So this kind of help is really appreciated, and I hope Gavin doesn't prolong all this because I just want it to end as soon as possible. Update 2. My last update was last week, and 2 days after posting it, Gavin decided to contact me again. I had blocked him everywhere, so he decided to show up at our house, and when I refused to let him in, he started pleading at the door. He was on his knees telling me that he was really sorry for everything and that he had been trying to think of a way out of this whole problem for the past few weeks. I didn't even want to listen to him, but unfortunately my curiosity got the better of me, and while he was trying to reason with me from the porch, I continued to listen. He explained that after he had seen those messages that Helen had sent to my phone, he had deleted them and started to panic. So the next day, he took a flight to where she lived and tried to reason with her. Apparently, he hadn't been happy with her from the start. He had always considered their whole affair a mistake. He claimed that he had met her 6 years ago when he was in her hometown at a conference as they worked in the same sector. They had got on well back then, and that was how they had started an affair. He had wanted to end it after a couple of weeks, but by then she was already pregnant and insisted on having the baby, so he was trapped with the responsibility of remaining in her life and couldn't bring himself to break up with her. He made it sound as if he had been the victim of a pregnancy trap, but I didn't really believe him. Anyway, this has been going on for 6 years, and lately he had been trying to break up with her, but she wasn't willing to let him go, and out of anger and spite she decided to send me messages and try to ruin our marriage. Then, when he confronted her about it, she decided to break up with him, and apparently she had also told him that she was going to make sure she destroyed his marriage. After that, he decided to disappear for a couple of days because he was panicking and didn't know what to do. In the meantime, she came and told me everything, and it all fell apart. He told me he had been a coward for not being able to tell me the truth, but now he was willing to leave everything and everyone behind and come back to me, and all he needed was a second chance. He assured me that he was ready to leave Helen behind for good and that he would never see his daughter again. He would just keep sending money, and that would be enough because he had had a conversation with Helen and she didn't want anything to do with him either. So she was going to leave him alone, and all she needed from him was the money. He said this with a lot of bitterness, as if that wasn't what he wanted at all, but I was more concerned about other aspects. I told him straight away that I didn't want him back either, and I found it disgusting that he had found it so easy to say that he would never see his daughter again because, whether he liked Helen or not, he couldn't change the fact that his daughter was his own flesh and blood. She was his responsibility, and he should be there for her as a father. The fact that he had said so easily that he would never see her again made me question whether I was doing the right thing in agreeing to share custody of our own children with him, and I really mean that. I have nothing against Helen's daughter with Gavin, although I really hate them both. They were both aware of what they were doing, but unfortunately their daughter had no idea what had happened, and it would be really unfair to punish her for something like that. She is the only innocent person in this situation, and I am not someone who likes to play the heroine in any way, but in this situation I felt I had to say something, and while I still had influence and control over him, I decided to use it to make him feel guilty and make sure he didn't abandon his other daughter, because that would never make me happy. As a mother, I am only happy when my children are happy, and I wouldn't want any other child, especially a 4-year-old girl, to suffer something like this. It was quite a spontaneous decision for me to say it, but it seemed to be effective because he immediately told me that he would do whatever I wanted, but all I had to do was forgive him and promise to give him another chance. I told him that would never happen, and if he really loved me, he would just leave me alone now. I asked him to go away, to accept the terms of my divorce petition, and leave me alone because I was finished with him for good. He started sobbing and crying at the door, but I told him I would call the police if he didn't leave, and he finally went away. After that, I didn't hear from him for the next few days until this morning. He had finally responded to the request and agreed to all the terms, and I couldn't have been happier about it. It just means we'll be finished with the divorce much quicker than if he had objected or tried to change anything, and for that one thing I am grateful to him. At least he's not complicating things any more than he already has, and will finalize the custody arrangements soon too. It will still take a few weeks for the divorce to become official, but I'm okay with waiting because at least I won't have to undergo mediation or negotiations as I had feared previously. However, just because he's given up fighting me over the divorce doesn't mean he's given up on us completely. A couple of hours ago I received an email from a very random address, and when I started reading it, I instantly realized that it had to be him. He began by apologizing to me once again for everything he had put me through, for everything he had put the children through too, and he said he regretted it more than anything else in his life. He said that he had not been able to be honest and good either to me or to Helen, and he was really deeply ashamed of that. But to make up for it, he was going to do everything possible to be a good father to all his children, and he hoped that at least we could have a smooth, shared parenting experience, and maybe at some point in the future I would find it in my heart to forgive him for everything he had done wrong. He also mentioned that, as he had told me that if he really loved me he would leave me alone and not drag out the divorce, he had done exactly that, and he wanted me to know that even when he was with Helen, he always thought of me and always felt guilty about it. In the end, he confessed that he really loved me and always would, and he was willing to wait the rest of his life for me to come back, and even if I didn't, he would still love me. It seemed like a very strange email to me, so after reading it I decided to mark it as spam, so I wouldn't have to look at it again, because it just made me feel very uncomfortable. I don't even know what to think about it, to be honest, but well, at least he did what I asked for with the divorce petition, and that's all I care about right now. Update 3. I am now officially divorced. It became effective last week, and I am finally free. We have also finalized the custody agreement. As I said, he is going to have partial custody. He will have the children every other weekend, because the rest of the time he will have to spend it with his daughter, with Helen. I'm fine with that because it means I can spend more time with the children. They are a little strange with him at the moment. They don't know what to expect. They don't understand what's going on, but they do realize that their parents are no longer together, and it's very unlikely that they'll see us together again. Their confusion is heartbreaking, but there's really nothing I can do, but at least they seem happy to be able to see their father, even if the situation is more awkward than it used to be. I guess they'll eventually get used to this too. They are still very young and have their whole lives ahead of them, so this is just a blip on the horizon. As for their grandparents, they have all been very supportive, including my in-laws, who have completely cut off contact with their son. Although I told them I didn't mind if they continued to have a relationship with him, because all I had ever wanted was for me to stay away from him. I didn't really care what anyone else did about their relationship with him, but I'm glad they're so firmly behind me that they don't even want to talk to him. Our friends are also now fully aware of everything that has happened, because I saw no reason to sugarcoat things and hide the truth. They too are not in a position to talk to him, and I am really very glad about that because it simply means that I won't have to hear about him from anyone else. I am quite relieved that things have come to an end because the last few months have been very stressful for me. Now I can finally begin to adapt to my new life, and I am going to start by taking some time off work and traveling with my children. I've already started preparing for a vacation. It will be a short one because I have to go back to work, but I'm still going to try to make the most of it. I think it's a well-deserved break. I've earned it after everything I've been through, and it will help me gain some perspective and just breathe a little. When I get back, I'm also planning to start therapy because I think I really need it. Update 4. Hi. It's been a while since my last update, almost 2 years, but I discovered something really interesting and felt I had to share it with you. You may remember the email I mentioned in one of my updates where Gavin had basically said he was committed to me forever, that he was never going to move on and would love me for the rest of his life, and I hadn't taken it seriously. I guess I was right to do, so because I recently heard some rumors from a couple of friends saying that he had gotten engaged last week, and today he and his new fiancée posted a pregnancy announcement. It's really funny, and I just hope he's doing well financially, because otherwise I don't even know how he's affording to have so many children and women in his life. Anyway, it's none of my business as long as my children are happy and healthy, and they seem to be doing well so far. They are not as attached to him as they used to be, but they are still kind and polite to him, and that is enough for me. After all, I can't expect them to be so close to him since they only see him a couple of weekends every month. Once the new baby is born, I don't even know how he's going to handle all these children, but my children probably won't even care so much, so I'm calm about that. We're all fine. I still have a good relationship with his parents, and they still don't talk to him. My parents have been trying to set me up with some other guy for a while, but I'm happily single at the moment. Being a mother is more important to me than anything else. I have been on a few dates in the last few months, but it has been nothing serious, and I am completely fine with that. It will happen when it has to happen, and even if it doesn't, I am still happy.